Okay, today we're looking at the intelligence factor, and you've heard me say many times that we look at God as there are four aspects or four elements, and this is not my original thinking. It's you find it in a lot of different sources when people are considering the nature of God, and one of the aspects of God is intelligence. There's a lot of controversy around it, around this idea. Science is, intelligence is the one spiritual resource that science tries to measure. We say God is life, love, power, and intelligence. You don't see science trying to figure out how much life each entity has, each organism has. Every one is fully alive. So it's not a matter of how much is being expressed through anything. All things express life. All living things express life. Love, they won't touch that one because it's a kind of an abstract idea. But the way I define love is that which draws to us the highest and best and dissolves that which is not. We see love as equally active every place we look, in every organism, every plant, every animal. Everything is working from that basis, drawing from the soil or from the environment that which is for its best and highest good, and getting rid of the things that are not. So that's the action of love. Power is also something we don't really consider. That power is expressed in the growing blade of grass. It's expressed in the volcano, the thunderstorm, in the drop of rain that falls. It's everywhere. So we don't really try to measure that. We measure it in one sense. We talk about horsepower and different levels of power. But in a natural sense, it is, we recognize that the universe is powered, that there's a power that runs it. So the only thing that we really get interested in measuring is intelligence. How much intelligence does a grasshopper have compared to a human being? Sometimes we wonder. But the scientists believe they can measure how much intelligence is expressed, and they relate that to the size of a brain. Whatever brain that is, and that's what I want to get into. But to look at it from a very different perspective, that if intelligence is an aspect of God and God is omnipresent, now I would lose every scientist on the planet already with that statement. But those of us that embrace the idea of God expressing intelligence, we would say also that intelligence is omnipresent, that it's not necessarily more present in one creature than another, regardless of brain size, that there's another way to look at that, and that's how we're going to think of it today. Opening Genesis, and I know this is small print and you're familiar with the verse, but I'll read it. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light, and God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning one day. So we see darkness here, and we would ask, well, where's the light? If there's light, if God said, "Let there be light," where is the light? And the light is there. We just don't see it, and we don't see it because there's nothing to reflect it. But as soon as we throw something up there to reflect it, we see the light. So when you're thinking in terms of omnipresence, this is how we think about it. Just because we don't see something, because there's no receptor present, nothing to reflect that light or that intelligence, that means it's not present. We are always immersed in light. And what's interesting about this is we would think when God said, "Let there be light," he's talking about sunshine. Well, the sun's not created till the fourth day, the sun and the moon and the stars. So we're not talking about sunlight. We're talking about a light that underlies the seen universe. And what do we associate with light? You know, you see a picture of a person that has an idea. What does that manifest as? Usually a light bulb. We associate light with intelligence, new ideas. Sometimes there are people, when that light bulb comes on over their head, I get nervous. But it's the idea that a new idea has come, new intelligence is being expressed. We associate that. So how can light be omnipresent? And this is how. And here, of course, the illustration always breaks down when you analyze it too closely, because we are talking about sunlight. But the spiritual dimension is, one of its aspects is intelligence. And so we begin to think of that intelligence not as centered in different entities and not expressed according to the size of a brain necessarily, although that does factor in. And I'll explain why that is true. But we begin with the idea that there's intelligence, the intelligence of the universe, intelligence of God, is wherever I am. In this intelligence, in this light, I live and move and have my being. I'm never separate from it. So when I say I don't know what to do with my life at this moment, what I'm saying is it possible that I'm not in infinite intelligence anymore? And I come back because I'm on the spiritual path and say that can't be true. So I open myself to this light. I change the way I think. I repent. I change my mind. I change the way I think about the situation, and I say, let there be light. And it doesn't mean that what's already here, there's going to be more of it. There's already enough. But I open my mind to that one presence and one power, that one intelligence that is there all the time. So the way to think about this, it's pretty interesting. And all of you have a smartphone, pretty much, or a cell phone of some kind. Mine, I think it's got about a fourth grade education. I'm not really sure how smart it is. But sometimes it outsmarts me, and sometimes I get the best of it. But we call them smartphones, I think, because we're proud of our technology, and they do some pretty cool things. But if you think of the brain as your phone that taps into an invisible communications network, which think of as infinite intelligence, because the network is not located inside the phone, the status of the phone, turned off or even broken, has no impact on the network. So if you think of the brain that is in the animal, the plant, whatever intelligence comes through, as a device, they don't all function the same way. They don't all allow the networks to come through, but we live in this network. We actually live and move and have our being in the wireless network. It's in this room at this very moment. You could take your cell phone right now, I hope you don't do it, but you could take it and you could surf the internet. And where is that? Is that internet in your telephone, or is it somehow in this invisible ether that is the atmosphere in which we live already? So when you think of omnipresence, that's a very good way to translate that concept so you understand it, because we all understand wireless. I don't know how it works. And see, that's what science is trying to do. They're trying to figure out, how does the brain generate intelligence? How does the brain work? So they're trying to figure that out. We don't really have to do that. I don't feel like I have to figure out how it does it. I'm curious about it. If somebody does figure it out, I want to hear about it. But so far, it's all theory. But what is not theory is right now we live in a cell phone network. It's like it's not somewhere out there. I mean, yes, the towers and however that all works is not hardware that we see right here. But it is broadcasting an invisible intelligence, a way that you can take your device and think of that as your brain. Well, don't think of that as your brain, but think of it as a device that will tap into that omnipresent network. So the network is not inside the cell phone. It is everywhere present. And not all cell phones are created equally. They are, depends on what you spend on them. I was someplace, in the dentist's office the other day, and the receptionist was talking about how much money her daughter had just spent on a cell phone. It was like over $1,000. Maybe some of you have purchased one of those also. And I said, well, what's that do that mine doesn't? And, it probably does a lot of things. Hers doesn't. What does it do that I need that it doesn't do? And maybe it does access the news 4 seconds faster than mine. Well, a lot can happen in 4 seconds, so you might lose out. But it comes down to, we get tuned into this technology. Not all phones are created equal. Well, and people are actually defining themselves by their phones these days. It's kind of interesting. And by their computers, the power of the computer and all. So we're buying into a level of self-perception that we're probably going to need a support group to fix one of these days. But anyway, we'll get to that when we get to it. But that's a very good way, I think, to think of omnipresence. You can think of it also in terms of a television or any broadcasting system that's going on, that where you just take a device and tune into the network that's already there. And it gives you a better understanding. If you think of your brain in the same way as that device, our brains are kind of a device. That's a way to think about it. So assuming intelligence is generated by the brain, mainstream science emphasizes the importance of brain size. If you look at anything having to do with the evolution of the human race, they'll always show that. They'll show different sized brains, and they know that by the skulls that they dig up. This skull takes a smaller brain, could only have a smaller brain, this one bigger, 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 until we reach the point where we are now. The human brain is the second largest here. I know you can't probably read these, but the biggest is the toothed whale, which has a brain just a little larger than ours. But the whale is a lot larger than we are. The next one down is chimpanzee. Down from there is dog, hare, H-A-R-E, and then the shrew has the smallest of all. Well, you wouldn't expect a shrew to have a brain the size of ours. But so we have these... Science says that intelligence is generated by the brain. It emphasizes the importance of brain size, but the emerging science that is gaining traction treats the brain more as a receiver than an originator of intelligence. And you will hear scientists give exactly the same illustration I just did with cell phones, only they'll usually use television. Think of your very existence, your very being, not as centered in your body and in your head and your brain, but centered everywhere, and your brain tunes it in. Your brain is that receiver that is able to tune it in. If a person has brain damage, it doesn't mean any more to the reality, the underlying reality, than if you break your cell phone. I was looking for pictures of broken cell phones, and there's a ton of pictures of people taking hammers and smashing. I guess I know what they feel like. But that's how an emerging science, I'll say, around the near-death experience, but not just there. There are many scientists that are considering this, that maybe the brain is not the source of intelligence, because even the people that say it is cannot explain how that would possibly work. They give all kinds of theories about how it may work, but none of them can say how it does work, how intelligence can be derived from matter. We have the Big Bang that starts out with matter, a little speck of matter smaller than, a fraction of the size of an atom. It expands into this billions and billions of galaxies that we see. Well, how do they do that? Well, we don't know, but it just does it. It just happens. And how does an intelligent being come out of dead matter? How does that happen? Well, it could have been a lightning strike. It could have been, a lot of things. Science has tried to create life in the laboratory. The closest they've gotten, I think, is the creation of some amino acids, and that was many years ago. But if you think of life as not being confined to the organism, but the organism is expressing that at different levels, different ways of doing that. So I have come up with an expression sequence, and that's really at the bottom. We start with intelligence. We go to intuition. That's the first way we receive intelligence. Then we go to instinct. We go to intellect. And then the top of the chart is imagination. So the plant and animal kingdoms operate at the first three levels: intelligence, intuition, and instinct, while we humans embody all five. We have intelligence, intuition, instinct, intellect, and imagination. And you can see the blue bars that go, horizontal blue bars, cross some of the lines because, animals have a level of intellect. Some animals display some level of intellect, but they operate mostly by instinct. In the wild, and particularly if you get them in a laboratory, a lab rat can do some pretty amazing things. They put the orangutan at the top of the list in terms of animal intelligence. But it's, we share, the reason we feel so compatible, or I don't know if that's the right word, but that we share a kind of a harmonizing feeling with animals is because we share the life. We share the life force, and we share various levels of intelligence. But we, if the orangutans were as intellectually capable as human beings, we may have a Planet of the Apes. We may have a problem with that. I don't know. But everything is smart enough to work in its place, to work in its particular niche. And the irony of the whole thing is the human being who has these greater faculties of intellect and imagination has really disrupted the whole system, and has, we have destroyed a lot of things, we have done a lot of damage, but we are hopefully turning some of that intelligence back on how are we supposed to fit into this? How is it supposed to work? How are we supposed to work with it? How are we supposed to cooperate with the natural world and work with it? We have the intelligence to do that. Animals wouldn't necessarily do that, wouldn't necessarily ask those questions, although there are many that move in with us in terms of wild animals coming into the town and so on. I looked out the other day, there was, there's hawks that hunt in our backyard, and it's not something I would expect to see. In Missouri, you see them out in the country and up on telephone poles and stuff like that, but you don't ever see them on your privacy fence. But there's ways that we do get along and benefit each other, but that's a big question that we're all asking. How do we keep from destroying our environment? Every time I go out into the desert here, I get a little bit disgusted because people take their couches and their televisions and whatever else out there and dump them. And I don't know how anybody could do that. I just can't even comprehend that. But that's a human being that's doing it. No dog would do that. It's not an orangutan wouldn't do it, I'm sure. But it's that's the irony, is the most intelligent creature on this planet can be the most destructive in global sense, and we're having to keep that in check all the time, and we're not really always keeping it in check. But this is what I think is very interesting that Jesus said. He said, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." I call this a modified saying because Son of Man was capitalized, S-O-N, capital S. And the reason I explained a couple of weeks ago that Son of Man was a phrase used in the Old Testament to simply signify a human being, and it was not capitalized. In the New Testament, those writers capitalized it to refer to Jesus. But you keep in mind that Jesus was a Jew who practiced his whatever religion from Jewish scriptures. So he would have thought as the ancients thought about that phrase, Son of Man. It just means a human being. So foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the human being has nowhere to lay his head. And what can that possibly mean? It's a way of saying that the human being has the creative capacity to move beyond mere instinct. There are no predetermined outcomes. You see, the fox's den is, if you see one, if you know what to look for and you see one, you'll know what it is. If you see a bird nest, if you're familiar with bird nests, you'll know what kind it is. Because, say, like a robin builds a nest, you'll know that's a robin's nest. If you're familiar with those, they don't have a choice. They would never go out and dig a den. A robin would never go out and dig a den, and a fox is not going to build a nest in a tree. They are programmed to operate within the context of their given environment, and they are very intelligent in doing this. And that's why their brain is the size it is. They only need to reflect so much intelligence, and the purpose of the wildlife, plant and animal, seems to be reproduction, so they can perpetuate the species and do that successfully. And if something happens where the environment is upset, then that goes beyond instinct. Whereas a human being, the Son of Man has no place to lay his head, it means that we'll adapt. There's no end point. There's no predictable outcome. If we see a problem, we can fix it because we have the intellect and the imagination to be able to do that. That sets us apart from the animal kingdom, which is why we have to be stewards of this. We are inflicting our consciousness on it, and we're causing problems, and we need to use that same intellect and that same imagination to fix the problems we cause. But an animal, first of all, won't do that, won't cause the problem in the first place, but it works within its realm, within its niche. And it is the Son of Man having no place to lay his head means we're not built that way. We operate beyond instinct. We have abilities beyond, we have instinct. It's natural learning, natural desire. My instincts tell me to do this or that. We say it's kind of a way of saying I feel moved. Something moves me to do this. But then we have the intellect to put a plan down, to figure out things logically, figure out what works, what doesn't work. And we have the imagination to keep throwing up new pictures. How can I think outside this box? What solutions are there? There's something. So we have that ability to do that. To me, that's what Jesus would have been talking about. What Matthew does is he creates a context. He has a scribe coming up to Jesus saying, "Master, I'll follow you any place." And Jesus responds with, "Foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head," capital S. In other words, if you follow me, you get ready. You're going to have some problems because life is not going to be real smooth for you. That's what Matthew's trying to say, that to follow Jesus is going to have some ramifications that you may not like, you may not be able to stick with. Did Jesus mean that originally? I don't think so. He was talking about people in their life and how to think of themselves and their life differently. He's saying foxes are limited, birds of the air are limited, but you're not. You have no place to lay your head. There's no set outcome for your life. So think differently about that. Instead of saying, I don't know what to do. That's what instinct would say. It's beyond my understanding of what this environment is throwing out. He says, stop saying that. Stop talking that way. He's talking to the average common person. Don't think of yourself as restricted by your environment. You have no place to lay your head. That's a good thing. Don't judge by appearances. That's a good thing. You've got more going for you than the animals do. And the animals are doing just fine if we leave them alone. But that's, to me, what the spiritual teacher would be saying. He wouldn't be saying, if you follow me, you're in for a real ride here, a real roller coaster ride. He would be saying, here's how to deal with your life in a more positive way. I think that's who he was. I think that's what he taught. That, to me, is the way that he taught, is how to make your life better. And that would be the question everybody that followed him would be asking, as we do today. How can I make my life better? How will this teaching make my life better? And he's saying, you've got a facility, a faculty here that will take you beyond circumstance. Don't judge by appearances. Affirm, let there be light. Take a higher approach. So what is the message? The message is we're not victims of circumstance. If we are immersed in infinite intelligence, then that's why he would say, don't judge by appearances, because you are immersed in infinite intelligence. Begin to open the aperture of your thinking, your mind, to the presence of this intelligence. Jesus is seeking to inspire a new outlook on what it means to be human. That is absolutely what I think he was doing. That's what I think his ministry was all about. As he told Pilate, for this I was born, for this I've come, to bear witness to the truth. You're not a fox and you're not a bird. You're a human being. And you've got faculties that take you beyond what you think at this very moment. How are you using your faculties? How are you seeing things? How are you seeing yourself? Learn to see differently. That's what I think his message was. This would have been his primary reason for encouraging people to develop their own relationship with God. And that seems to be a main focus. Go in your closet, pray to your Father who's in secret. In other words, get to know that intuitively first, that presence, that intelligence. Get to know it and then begin to affirm it in your daily life. I think that's what he was all about. All right. Does that give you a little bit different view of intelligence? So don't worry about your brain. They have Einstein's brain someplace, but they say they can't tell any difference between it and yours and mine, although they've never really examined mine. But I think that's interesting, that if that's where it's at, then he should have something different. There should be more RAM chips or something in there, but so far they haven't found them. All right. Well, thanks for coming out. And just remember, next week after church, we'll go down and have some coffee and cookies and whatever we find. All right. Thanks. Seems unclear, and you're not even sure what you're doing here. Another day creeps along like another year. Did anybody even see you wipe away that tear? everything you say or do. Just open your eyes to the pain that another is going through. Just take them by the hand until their light shines anew. Like a star, you too are a light. You may be small, but you know that it's alright. 'Cause even when you're not feeling all that bright, you can still guide a weary traveler through the night. There will be times when you lose your way, and you'll feel like you're going it alone. Just give another the gift of a better day, and you surely will have one of your own. There will be times when you lose your way, and you'll feel like you're going it alone. Just give another the gift of a better day, and you surely will have one of your own. Everybody says we're only reaping what we sow. The day is coming when we have to pay everything we owe. So why not sow a little bit of love and let it grow? You touch another heart in a beautiful way, you'll never know. 'Cause like a star, you too are a light. You may be small, but you know that it's alright. 'Cause even when you're not feeling all that bright, you can still guide a weary traveler through the night. Like a star, you too are a light.
You are a light.
You may be small, but you know that it's alright.
Yeah, it's alright.
'Cause even when you're not feeling all that bright, you can still guide a weary traveler through the night. You can still guide a weary traveler through the night. You can still guide a weary traveler through the night.
You've been watching a talk given by Reverend Doug Bottorff here at Independent Unity in beautiful Grand Junction, Colorado. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us spread our message. If you would like to support us, you can do so by clicking the button in the right-hand corner of the video screen. We greatly appreciate your support. Thanks again for watching.